It's like I was attracting partners to replay parts of my childhood. I continued to manifest people that wanted to take something from me, but were not interested in giving much back. That was the cycle. It's like I had this belief that to be valuable, I had to give and give and give, that who I am was not worthy enough. I was in a place of sort of a radical commitment to stop the cycle. I was just done. Whatever is happening is about me. There's something within me that's allowing these things to happen. I mean, I'd been in therapy for a long time. I've worked with a variety of coaches. I'd worked in just about every arena except for romantic relationships specifically. And so what I realized about conscious partnership is that I couldn't call it in until I was really willing to be vulnerable myself.
Go ahead and just sort of fill me in on him, on the relationship, and I guess what's different with what you have now versus what you have experienced all the way up until now.
I think if you asked him, he could probably see this person who's just content and has a full life and feels complete. Really, I came into it with a, who are you? You know, I want to know who this man is first before we go any further with this. And that to me was so new and different. There's also something about how he showed up and engaged with me that left me feeling deeply respected and seen. And, you know, that's something I had on my clarity script is I was ready to be met with reverence. And he has done nothing but show up with reverence for me, which feels so good. And so that's also helped to build intimacy and respect and this depth that I've never really experienced before. I really do feel seen and known and heard in this partnership. I mean, we're exploring depths of intimacy that neither of us have. It's all new territory for both of us. And when there's reverence in the way that we have, there's a depth that's accessible that has never been accessible to me before. I've always wanted it and sort of longed for it, but I couldn't get there because the foundation was not there. But I think it's sort of our wildest dreams that because of the foundation, we go to these really magical, beautiful, unexpected places together.
Right, we are going. Okay. Hello, Amber.
Hi.
Welcome to our little chat here. Thank you for doing this. I'm really grateful because it's, we're going to get to it, but some of the transformations that you've been experiencing and some of the shifts that have been happening for you have been very inspiring and hopefully are going to be very inspiring for a lot of the people listening here today as well. So, thank you again. And so what I always start with these interviews, these success stories, is really just finding out, kind of taking a few steps back and finding out where you were at, sort of when we first spoke, you and I, what was going on for you, or maybe what was not going on for you in the relationships department. You know, I know you were single at that time. You'd had some experiences, so I guess, in your own words, what was happening for you in that realm?
Yeah. So I think when I actually reached out for a clarity call, I was post breakup and was in a place of radical self-care. I had decided at that point in time that it was time to really hunker down and do the work that I needed to do to stop attracting men who were not good for me, that were playing out old patterns. And there was something about, I'd sort of transitioned from the posts from Unhealed Man really resonating deeply to, okay, this isn't about him, this is about me. Whatever is happening is about me. There's something within me that's allowing these things to happen or that's attracting this type of partner. And I don't want that anymore. And so I was in a place of sort of a radical commitment to stop the cycle. I was just done. So.
Yeah, that's, thank you. And I'm curious, what where you said that type of partner, what was that pattern? What was this sort of thing that kept coming up for you at that time?
Yeah, it's like I was attracting partners to replay parts of my childhood. To There was something left undone there, and so it's like something within me was so used to being treated a certain way that I continued to attract partners that would behave in ways that were super familiar to younger versions of me. And
Mm.
I was also tired of attracting partners that I knew were not good for me. um, and so I just was ready to kind of step into my highest potential, which also meant attracting a partner that matched my highest potential. And I'd always sort of felt like I was sacrificing something or many things to be in relationship. And I was ready to move on from that.
Yeah, wow. I love I've always loved the insight that you have into yourself, because you're not new to doing this kind of work, as you mentioned, and we'll get to that in a minute as well. But yeah, really, really insightful stuff. And when you talk about the sort of being treated the way that you was used to, I guess without necessarily going into the whole sort of story of you necessarily, what were some of those feelings, what were some of those patterns, what was that way that you were being treated, that in some way you were manifesting over and over again?
Yeah, I continued to manifest people that wanted to take something from me, but were not interested in giving much back. They just wanted to take and take and take and use for their own benefit. And really, it's people who were super self focused. You could say, selfish or self absorbed, but basically, where I'm giving and giving and giving, and they're taking and taking and taking. um, that was the cycle. It's like I had this belief that to be valuable, I had to give and give and give, that who I am was not worthy enough. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what? Just as you were saying that, Amber, I could see in my mind about 500 heads nodding, women's heads going, mm-hmm, like relating to that. That's you're not the first to sort of reveal that dynamic of giving and giving, and the other person taking and taking, and like you said, very self-focused, sometimes very work-focused, and it's this typical sort of dynamic in the masculine and feminine that gets played out. And yeah, so obviously that's you revealed that over time. You kind of were aware of that before we started working together. So what was some of the work that you done? Because if I remember correctly, you had done about like sort of 15 years of healing work before we ever uh, did anything with you. So what was some of the things that maybe you tried, and what did some of that journey look like?
Yeah. I mean, I'd been in therapy for a long time. I've worked with a variety of coaches. And I think I'd worked in just about every arena except for romantic relationships specifically. I mean, I had a little bit. I'd been married previously and I tried to save that marriage. And so I'd done a little bit of work in romantic partnerships, but mostly it had been on how I showed up at work or how I showed up in business or how I showed up in friendships, how I felt about myself outside of romantic relationships. And so
Mm,
my divorce in 20, I don't know, 17 really opened up a lot of challenges for me around worthiness, and I think triggered some wounds that I was not aware were still there. And
yeah,
so that was the work that I hadn't really done. I'd kind of dipped my toe in the water around it. But the relationship that I was in 2020 ripped those wounds open and like shined mega lights on them. So
yeah, yeah. Wow. And so I guess the sort of flip question I have to that then is, um, what were some of the biggest shifts that you noticed that sort of turned that around? You shone the light on what really needed to be healed. You tried lots of things before, and you're in this realm of as well as of helping people. So it's this, it's totally not new to you. But what were some of the maybe one or two like aha moments that were for you personally were really sort of thing that turned it around?
Yeah, the clarity script was huge. And I did that a few times because the first one that I did was, not, it was coming from, I can't remember the right words, but it was not coming from sort of my highest and best self. It was still coming from a bit of wounding.
Yeah.
And so getting to maybe the queen energy, uh, clarity script was super helpful. There was a no exercise that I think you walked us through a visualization of really grounding and feeling what a no felt like and really
Mm.
honoring that no, which is something that was relatively new to me. I mean, especially in that relationship, I had experienced so many no's that I didn't honor myself and that I let this other person then trample all over.
Mm.
So I think connecting with a no in myself was really helpful. I mean, I think the biggest thing that happened last year was learning to hear my intuition and learning to honor my intuition, that there is an inner knowing there. So,
Yes, yeah, wow. And when you speak of this sort of this queen energy, something comes to mind, which is um sometimes when the women come to the program, and we help them, we have to sort of really help them rebuild this whole sort of new version of them, like really from the ground up. One of the things with yourself, Amber, was actually that you've always had a certain amount of queen energy about you, actually. Like you're very poised, and it's just sort of right there, but it was just below the surface. And I think a lot of the times women feel, like yourself, they've done all the right things, they've ticked a lot of boxes in terms of self-development and self-work, and even maybe even getting their life in order, business or career, whatever it is. And it's like kind of, I feel good, but there's just, it keeps showing up in these patterns. There's something slightly disempowered here, and I guess that leads me to something I'd like to ask you as well, which is, um, you know, one of the things I've learned about people is that when they're looking at this kind of work, when they're looking at these transformations, there's this little voice in the head that always says, yeah, of course it worked for her or for him or for them, but it won't work for me. Because, well, look at her, she's radiant, she's, everything, she's got all the things. Well, that won't work for me, or, whatever it is. It's like this sort of thing that all human beings have, this little voice that says, will it work for me? Or, in other words, here's why it won't work for me. So I'm curious if you're able to remember back back at that time, what were some of the things for you maybe that were in your mind in terms of um, why a conscious partnership wasn't for you, or yeah, that won't work for me because I da da da, or my past, you fill in the blank. I don't know if that's too vague a question, but if there's anything that comes up for you there.
I don't know that it was exactly that way for me. I think earlier versions of me might have come up with that much easier. I think an aha that I had is that I'd been so focused on two things. One, just having a partnership. There was like this underlying belief that if I didn't have a partnership, then there was something wrong with me. If I wasn't in a relationship, then that meant something about me or my value, my worth. Um, and so I'd been chasing partnership. So I think that was part one.
Hmm.
I think part two is I'd been so focused on the other person that I wasn't really focusing on myself. And so what I realized about conscious partnership is that I couldn't call it in until I was really willing to be vulnerable myself. And by attracting partners who were emotionally unavailable, so to speak, who hadn't done their work, who, were behaving in all the ways that they were behaving, it sort of let me escape doing work on myself.
Yes, yes.
Um,
That's a common one.
yeah, so I think that that was my aha, was like, "Oh, crap, like, I gotta do this work on myself and be with what part of me is unwilling to go there." And so it wasn't quite like, "I can't have that," or, "Here's why it's not going to work." It was this realization of, "Oh, I need to, A, just be so okay with myself and feel valuable and whole all alone and really feel that way." I mean, I think I had said that in the past, but there was always this like, I need a partnership.
Right.
And then also I needed to really look at myself to get curious about what within me wasn't available, what within me was I holding back and perhaps scared to be in conscious partnership because it would mean that I would have to step up.
Wow, thank you. There's some really, really good distinctions in there. So the first one was the differentiation between um, I'm happy and single, I'm fine, I'm okay by myself, but also at the same time, yeah, I guess I would like to be in partnership, or whatever version it is. Everyone has a slightly different version of that, but instead, actually getting okay with yourself as you are in the moment here now with you, no one else in the room, just you and you, or maybe you and love, right? And getting okay there, while at the same time not being in any kind of denial about the longing, about the yearning for partnership, right? Does that sound sort of
Yeah, it's sort of like maybe someday I'd love to have that. And, I created in a different program, I created this conscious love map. And so
mhm,
I know deep down there that that's what I wanted someday.
right?
But really, I mean, this was a huge thing for me last year, getting to a place where I was like, no, like I'm really actually happy single. Like my life is good. I'm not craving partnership.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, wow. And another piece in there as well was getting really clear on what you wanted in partnership and how that would meet the version of you that you've got to know, as opposed to just previously um, feeling like, well, if I'm not in a relationship, then there's something wrong with me, which is a completely different kind of thing. So, all right, now the good stuff then. Um, Very excited to hear this. You are now in partnership, and after having got very clear on what you want, and yeah, I don't even really know what to ask you. Go ahead and just sort of fill me in on him, on the relationship, and I guess what's different with what you have now versus what you have experienced all the way up until now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first thing is, and this is so cliche, but at least it was true for me. I was not looking for partnership. And this man and I were introduced through a mutual friend for reasons unrelated to dating.
Mhm.
Um, and, when he expressed interest in me, it was a few months after we had met. And I was kind of like, but I'm not dating. I don't want to date. Like I'm really okay, like not being in partnership. And so I think that was the big difference, or a big difference is I genuinely was not looking. And so
Mm,
I think there was something about that I think if you asked him, he could probably see this person who's just content and has a full life and feels complete and just
yes.
enjoying life. And so I think there was something about that was attractive to him. And I think a second thing that was different is when he expressed interest, I think metaphorically, I kind of did this and went,
Uh-huh.
interesting. Like, I'd be willing to get to know you. And so I really kept him sort of at arm's length until I had a really good sense of who he was, what he wanted, what he was about, where he was in his life. And, that took probably, I think he expressed interest the end of September or so. And we officially kind of started dating the beginning of November. So we
Mhm.
had many phone calls, lots of time together platonically, just talking. And so I think not confusing things by getting physical too soon. Really, I came into it with a who are you? And I
Yes.
want to know the answer to that first before my puppy has it.
Growling puppy.
Yeah, I want to know who this man is first before we go any further with this. And that to me was so new and different. So it felt really good to have a good sense of who he was, how he was, what he wanted, where he was coming from. And something that was awesome about him is he's like, open book. You ask me whatever you want to ask me. And
Mhm.
we'll go there. There's nothing off limits. And so that too felt really good.
Yes. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. So, for first thing, you touched on something really key there, which was you being whole unto yourself, you being complete in yourself. And what that does, right, is it closes any of the gaps where previously what many people experience different forms of rescuing or unconscious shadowy ways of trying to complete the other, which is actually a way of sort of it's actually a form of control, right? When you don't have that, when you have that complete relationship with yourself, like you did, the kind of person, and you would have been surrounded by such men who are looking to connect with somebody superficially, or fill in the blank, any kind of toxic dynamic that anybody experiences. They really just wouldn't even see you. It might be sort of, I'm going to look, and then no, that I can't get my hooks in there, or whatever it is. So what that means then is that what's left is the kind of person who is not looking for that, who is looking for somebody who is actually whole unto themselves, who does have a complete relationship with themselves, will see you because you resonate on that frequency. And it's just like you said before, you change that relationship with yourself, you really sort of become more intimate with yourself, right? To the point where you're not really looking for anyone to fill that void anymore, so to speak. And so therefore you're not going to resonate with people who are looking for that as well. And then, the other piece that you mentioned there as well, which is going slow, which is, you know, it's Beth and I always say slow is good. That's sort of our mantra, which you may remember. But it's one of these things that you can't fake, right? Like, if that, what so many people experience is this intensity, and there's often a kind of addiction to this fireworks and the whole sort of, oh my god, this is the one, and all of that buzz and all of that kind of thing. And you can tell yourself, well, I'm going to go slow because, in the past, all that intensity led to unhealthy relationships. But unless you've genuinely um, attended to that part of you that sort of gets that high, gets that fix off that intense connection, or all that kind of love at first sight, butterflies in the tummy, getting sort of the anxiousness, unless you've actually attended to that wound, it's very difficult to fake. And so this what I'm hearing in you is this ability to really take things slow, but not from a tactic, not from I'm going to pull away to make him chase me, not from hard to get or anything like that, but instead actually coming from a place of genuine self love, where what is the loving thing to do here? It is to go slow. It is to keep myself safe while also being curious. And I actually, as I said that, I remember, this is something that you really spoke to a lot in the program, which was this curiosity. I always found that very yeah, very powerful about you, your ability to be curious. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of unpack that for the people listening. I don't know if you have anything else to sort of to say to that.
You know, I think the other thing in that, and this is what's beautiful about partnership, is he also honored the boundaries that I set there. When I said, I think on our sort of first date, which was also platonic, we went camping together for a weekend with some other people, and he was pretty excited to maybe hold hands or something in that space. And I said, I'm not ready for that. I'd really like to know who you are. And that feels too fast to me. He honored those boundaries. And so there's
Mhm.
also something about how he showed up and engaged with me that left me feeling deeply respected and seen. And that's something I had on my clarity script, is I was ready to be met with reverence. And he has done nothing but show up with reverence for me, which feels so good. And so that's also helped to build intimacy and respect and this depth that I've never really experienced before. Um, so there's also how he showed up with me. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's it's so beautiful to hear. I always feel very moved when I hear of yeah, very conscious men who who are on that level, because they are 100% out there. They are there, and it's nobody's fault. But the reason we don't resonate with the people who our heart is truly yearning for is because we haven't started to hold ourselves with that kind of reverence, right? And so, what you were saying there about even holding hands, that feels too soon right now. Some people will hear that and think, like, "Oh, come on, it's just holding hands, right?" And it's really just because, with no judgment, that person hasn't really got to the depth of true self-love and self-reverence, where that makes sense. And then there are some people as well who will hear that and say, "Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that sounds good because I don't like intimacy either." And that's not the same thing either. So it's so beautiful to hear. And I do remember you saying that you really wanted to connect with a man of purpose, and somebody who really sees, yeah, I mean, reverence, it's such a beautiful word. Somebody who you can build something with and grow together. And so, yeah, how is that going in that department with him?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of what makes him even more attractive, is he has his own purpose in life. He also does, similar but different work to me. So he cares very much about humanity and development. So that's been amazing. Um, but we also get to share in the ways that we're growing, and he's interested in that, and I'm interested in what he's doing. And so it's been fun to sort of collaborate and dream and just be part of each other's worlds in that way.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just created this whole new sort of depth of being seen in relationship. And, at least in my most recent relationship before that, I did not feel seen or heard or known at all. That was one of the things that was so painful. And I really do feel seen and known and heard in this partnership. And, I would like to venture and say that he does also. So that that
Nice.
feels that feels good. And I think something really cool is, because of how we've built, I mean, we're exploring depths of intimacy that neither of us have. It's all new territory for both of us. But I think it's sort of our wildest dreams that, because of the foundation, we go to these really magical, beautiful, unexpected places together. So there's also that.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well, it's worth saying. You are actually a very adventurous soul. You in the very real sense of sort of going out into the world, exploring. I'm always seeing you climbing mountains and all kinds of cool stuff. So the journey with somebody, I imagine, or in fact, I don't imagine, I know because we used to speak about it, is actually really. Yeah, I mean, it must be absolutely everything for you to explore, not just sort of the outer world, but the inner world and a shared inner world with somebody, that ultimate exploration and adventure. You're right.
Yeah. Well, and when there's reverence in the way that we have, there's a depth that's accessible that has never been accessible to me before. I've always wanted it and sort of longed for it. But I couldn't get there because the foundation was not there. And also I didn't have the right partner in all those cases, but I also was not in a place to create it myself. And so um, I think that's been a real big learning, is what's possible when there's true intimacy there. We can talk about anything, which I so appreciate. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. And it really, this is, everybody, I can feel the women watching and this sort of like sigh of like, oh my God, this is spiritual partnership. This is conscious partnership. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. This is what is 100% possible. And I'm curious to actually hear about some other things that might be shifting for you as well, Amber. But before moving on to that, is there anything else you actually wanted to say to that in terms of conscious partnership and how different it is, or anything specific to him or whatever you want?
Yeah, I think the other thing I would add that's been amazing about conscious partnership is the way that conflict happens. Conscious partnership doesn't mean that there's never conflict or disagreements or challenges. What's been beautiful is when those things happen, because as we're going deeper, it's going to bring up deeper things within both of us. But just the way that those things get handled, and the way, something I appreciate about him is the way he turns toward conflict, and the way that he can be with that. It doesn't scare him to have hard conversations, even though they're not comfortable, they're not fun. He turns toward it and turns toward me. And even sometimes when I notice within myself maybe a desire to like say, whatever, I'm going to avoid this, he's really good about turning toward it, even I think better than I am, which I used to think I was pretty good at handling conflict. But that's something I really appreciate too, is that conflict gets handled differently. And I think this comes from John Gottman, sort of the repair attempts are there, and that each time which there hasn't been that many, but each time it deepens our connection, it deepens trust, it deepens intimacy. And so that's been really beautiful too about conscious partnership.
Wow. What a man. This is my kind of guy. I love this guy. That's my guy. That's warrior energy, right? Heart connected warrior energy turns towards conflict, front facing toward enemy, so to speak. But in this case, and there's understandably so much resistance in many ways to that part of man. And so many women are in a sort of inner conflict that they're often not aware of, in that Beth and I have found, which is, on the one level, they want that sort of fierceness of man, right? That, that fierce love, that ability to, it's an edgy word, but that penetrative energy that is able to cut through bullshit, to cut through conflict and get right to it while connected to the heart. But there's that resistance there because so many of us collectively and individually have had experiences of that in an unconscious way, disconnected from the heart, right? So it's kind of like this, I want that, to feel that energy of man, but also I'm kind of afraid of that part of man. And so to hear, and to feel that you feel safe, in his ability to do that because it is heart connected. That's high level stuff. And I love it.
Yeah. Well, there in that are these choice points too. Like I can recall a conversation he and I had, that there was a choice point for me if I could turn away from this and very easily do, I don't know, some kind of like brush off and, pretend like I'm fine or whatever. And so that there have been these invitations for me too to step into a new level of intimacy of like, I'm going to turn toward this also. And it feels scary and it feels really vulnerable. But that choice, I think that we both continue to make to turn toward each other, even though it can feel scary, really has paid off.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I really want to honor the bravery of you both, and this and the bravest part really is um staying heart connected. It's the hardest thing, right? Heart connected and heart open in the face of challenge is the healing balm for everything. And so, what I'm also curious about then, just sort of moving on from the relationship specifically, is any other areas of your life that maybe you've noticed a shift in as well, because as you've expressed with me and all the other women we've spoken to be honest, is because it's not really relationship that's getting sorted out, it's your relationship to yourself. All these other areas start to show up. So I'm just curious, sort of, how you may have noticed the benefits in other areas too.
Yeah, well, I'm noticing my no more clearly, even in friendships, in business. I'm listening to that intuition, that small voice that creeps in at different times, and really honoring that. And the big thing is, even if I don't have all the information behind a no, like the why, the rationale, even if I don't have all the details, just being able to say, no, this doesn't work for me. And even if I can't explain why, just trusting that data, and being so grounded that something within me knows, even if I'm not conscious of what it is in this now moment. So that's been
Mm.
coming up quite often. I think also, a big thing, this has been really huge for me since August. I've mostly cut out alcohol. I've pretty much completely cut out meats. Um,
Okay.
and that was just a personal choice that I wanted to be able to listen better. And those were two things that, for whatever reason, have helped me to be more present and to listen.
Mm.
And um, it's allowed me to listen to myself much more clearly, like not having substances in my body. And so there's
Yeah.
been that, and that again is just a very personal choice.
Well, that's another level of no, right? That's the body saying no on the subtlest of levels, on the level of the energetic body, and you've so tapped into your intuition, as you say, to feel when something is a no, even if there isn't a logical sort of thought pattern that goes, well, here is why, here's the reasons. That comes that's secondary, right, to when the body says no, when there is that feeling sense. And if it says no to this substance or that substance or anything else, then it just is what it is. And like, as you said, for whatever reason, it's kind of doesn't really matter. But the point is, you then feel the benefits afterwards. Because here's the other thing, for the women watching: whenever you are getting very clear on what and honoring something that is a no for you, you are simultaneously saying yes to something else. And this is it. This is the fear that people, so many women specifically, honestly, tend to have, which is, if I say no too much, then I won't have anything. I won't have anything. And especially in relationship, if I say no, then um, there will be nothing to receive. But it's the opposite is true, right? The more you say no, and it's not just a case of saying no to everything, it's being attuned to being able to feel into the body as you've learned to do. And when you say no to what is genuinely a no for you, it opens the door for whatever is a yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And so I guess on that note then, and my last question for you would be, if you have any words of wisdom for the women watching. Is there anything that comes to mind that feels like you want to share with them?
Yeah. I think a big part of my own healing has been every single day making a choice of what does it look like to love myself today. And it's shown up in very small ways, from, cooking myself a meal to, tidying up my workspace to maybe working in my garden. And so I've realized last year that there was this point in which every day, sometimes moment to moment, asking myself, what does it look like to love myself in this moment? And that's where it starts. And I think that was my big aha, is my capacity to love someone else or to be loved by someone else will never be greater than the capacity to love myself. And
Wow.
so that's where it starts. And I get that that may sound cliche, and, it sounds like maybe easier than it, or harder than it actually is. I'm not sure. Um, but it's every day making that choice, and it's small choices. Um,
Beautiful.
yeah.
That perfect. Absolutely perfect. Thank you, Amber, for taking the time to share this story with us, and share your journey and these very, very powerful insights. I expected no less, to be quite honest. I was very excited to hear you today. And even though Beth couldn't be with us today, I was like, no, we booked it in. I want to hear this. Let's do it. So yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.